All right, are we ready? Oh, we're good. We're ready to go. Excellent. So good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for coming into Vegas, and thank you very much for coming into this session. There should be some slides popping up in a minute. Is that down to me? Let's see. Oh, we've got the Capgemini advert there. That's actually pretty good timing, Jason. So, good. All right. So, let me introduce myself first. I am Andy Ferner, and I am the global lead for the AWS Partner Migration Program. And the way I explain that sort of in a couple of sentences, I am all things migrating to AWS when it comes to working with partners like yourselves. And then internally within AWS, I am all things partners when it comes to the major migration programs that we have. And we're going to talk about a couple of those in this session today. On stage with me will be my colleague Kalpan Raval, who actually is the global lead for our migration technology partners. So he works with all our tooling partners, and he'll be covering some of the sessions as we go through. And then I'm delighted as well, standing over there, to have Jason Hatch, who is the Vice President of Cloud Adoption for Capgemini. And he's going to be talking about migrating to AWS from a partner perspective, hopefully from your perspective. So just before I get started, we have to do the typical traditional show of hands. How many people in this room are consulting or systems integration partners? Okay, good. That's probably about 50, 60%. How many are technology partners? Okay, good. That gives me an idea of the audience. Excellent. Hopefully that covers everybody in the audience. If you didn't put your hand up, I'm sure you know what you are. So, okay, let's look at the agenda. We are going to be, the first thing to say, I think it was in the description, migrating to the cloud has become mainstream. You all know that. Our customers are now saying not if I should go to the cloud, but how and how fast. And they're looking to partners like you to help them with that journey. And what we wanted to do in this session is, and that presents a significant business opportunity for you. And so what we wanted to do in this session was give you an overview of why we see customers moving to the cloud. What are the business drivers for them? And then also what that means for you as a partner. What is the opportunity for you? And then what we'll do, we've been working with our customers on large-scale migrations for the last 3 or 4 years now. Kalp and I personally have been working on these programs for the last 2.5, 3 years. And so what we wanted to do was share with you some of the general lessons we've learned from the hundreds of migrations, large-scale migrations we've done with our customers. So we wanted to share those with you. And we'll cover those in that session. And then the final component of the presentation is we wanted to talk to you about how we can work with you to support you as you're working with your customers to help them migrate over to AWS. So that's what we're going to be covering in this session. We've allowed some time at the end for questions, so please, as we go through, hold those questions to the end, and we'll make sure we have time to address those. Okay. So, why are our joint customers wanting to move to the public cloud in general and AWS specifically? As I said, we've worked with many, many customers, hundreds of customers on their move to AWS. And when we boil that down, we see the drivers mainly falling into these 3 areas. Firstly, a lot of our customers are facing disruption in their traditional businesses. Even the traditional companies that we know of, like a GE, for example, or the big financial institutes, they are seeing disruption and change in their marketplace, in their businesses. And they are wanting to respond like the more agile and nimble startups. So as a result, they're looking to the cloud as a platform to allow their teams to become more innovative and more agile and direct their energies away from maintaining and keeping the lights on and more for developing those innovative applications that are going to keep them ahead in the business game. They also want to retire their technical debt. Most companies have built up over the many, many years large legacy infrastructure. And that's taken a lot of time and effort for their teams to maintain and support that. And they want to remove that anchor, shall we say, from around their neck. So that is another reason they are looking to move to the public cloud and to AWS. And the final one is it's about risk. They want to have a more resilient IT platform to support their applications and their business practices. But they want to know that they're going to be moving to that platform in a secure and managed way. So those are the major drivers that we see. When we dig down a little bit more, we see these more specific drivers. As I've mentioned, agility and developer productivity. They want to get their people focused on actually developing new applications, facing the customer, rather than internally focused on maintaining their operations. So agility and productivity is critical. And we've seen productivity improvements of between 30 and 70% when our customers move to AWS. A lot of customers as well, as I said before, over the years, have developed a large infrastructure footprint that is difficult to manage and is expensive and time-consuming. And one of the other major drivers we see for the move to AWS is data center consolidation. And then, as I mentioned before, not only do customers want to be agile and productive, they want to be innovative. They want to digitally transform their businesses. And once again, they're using AWS to help them drive that change and that transformation through their businesses. And then, of course, a final one is cost reduction. That is the one that often comes to mind first for people, but actually, we see significant benefit there. But when working with your customers, they will also be looking at the business value components of moving to AWS as well. So please keep that in mind when you're working with them. Okay, so I've talked about why our joint customers want to move to the cloud. And now what I'm going to do in this slide is hopefully state the obvious to you. So bear with me for a minute or two. So our customers are looking to the public cloud. This presents a significant opportunity for you in the room. As I mentioned in the introduction, the public cloud is now becoming an enterprise strategic imperative. The tire kicking has stopped. It's not if we move to the cloud, it's how and how fast. The market is huge. It's estimated that globally $2 trillion is devoted to all IT operations, maintenance, support, management, and development. Now, obviously, not all of that is going to come to the cloud, but a significant chunk of that is going to come to the public cloud. And even if we all in this room just get a tiny percentage of that, it presents a significant business opportunity for us for now and in the foreseeable future. Speaking selfishly, helping our customers move to the cloud is a strategic imperative for AWS. It's a land grab out there. I think most of our salespeople, when they're out there talking to customers, and I hope it's probably the same for your salespeople, probably 80% of the conversations are, how do I get my legacy stuff into the cloud? And then 10 to 15% is going to be focused on what new developments can I do? You know, what innovation projects can I do? And 5 to 10% is probably going to be on the sexy stuff like IoT or machine learning or artificial intelligence. So 80% is on how do I get my legacy crap from here over onto the cloud. Right? So the customers are looking for that, we're looking for that, and we've put programs in place to help our customers do that. And partners are a critical and important component of that. We cannot do this heavy lifting on our own. And our assumption is that the vast majority of the heavy lifting is going to be done by you in this room. So you will be working with one of the major strategic initiatives of AWS. In fact, this year, our major migration program is reported up to the Andy Jassy level, the CEO, and in turn, on a monthly basis, up to Jeff Bezos. That gives you an idea of the focus and attention migrating to AWS has working with our customers. Yeah? And of course, with great visibility comes great responsibility. You better make sure you hit your goals if you've got that sort of visibility. And then the final one, and very important, our customers don't know how to do this. They're used to running their legacy environments. They don't know what it takes to move to the cloud. You do, or you should know very soon, and they need your help. And as I said, our programs assume that the vast majority of the work is going to be done by you in the room here. We don't have the professional services organization that can scale to deliver this. You're the ones who are going to do it. Now, I said the market was huge. Forrester estimate that by 2020, the public cloud market will be $236 billion. So that's in, what, another year or two? That is enormous. We're just scratching the surface. So there's a huge opportunity here. And, like it or not, if you're not talking to your customers about moving to the public cloud, sure as hell your competitors are going to be doing that. Because at the board level, within each one of your customers, they're thinking about, what is this public cloud thing? What should I be doing with it? How can it give value to my business? And if you're not having those conversations in your major customers, your competition is. So you better be having these conversations if you want to stay relevant to that customer and get the significant project opportunity coming out of that. And the opportunities are all the way from strategy, helping your customers determine their business direction, how they can innovate, how they can digitally transform their businesses through moving to the public cloud, through to helping them with the detailed planning and getting ready for the move to the cloud, and then, of course, helping them with the actual migration itself. Each of those stages, depending on the skills and capabilities of your business, of your company, presents a significant professional services and tooling opportunity. And some of our leading partners have figured that for every dollar of AWS spend that their customer does, they get at least $7 of professional services in return, between $7 and $10 for every dollar of AWS. So we're in Vegas. If you were there at the slot machine or the roulette table, if you knew you were going to get a 7-time return on your investment, in quotes, at the slot machine or the roulette table, you would probably go there. I would recommend that you focus in on this area. And I'm sure you're here, so you know that. But significant, $1 of AWS spend is equivalent to at least $7 of your services spend. Okay, so I've positioned the business drivers as we see it, and I've positioned the opportunity as we see it for you. Now what I'd actually like to do is bring a real live partner, Jason Hatch from Capgemini, who's going to talk a little bit about how they work with Louisiana Pacific and how this turned into a significant business opportunity for Capgemini. And you're going to be walking the wire without a net, aren't you? We've got a video, so we're going to bear with him. It might take a little juggling around to get it going.
We'll see if we can get
it
working.
Go, Jason.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone. So Capgemini has been a partner of AWS since 2011. We actually moved our first customer and did our first migrations to AWS in 2012. So we've got a very long and distinguished track record of working and partnering with AWS. The case study we're going to highlight today is for Louisiana Pacific, which is one of our long-term customers. In the early 2000s, we helped them implement SAP, and since then we've been doing project work for them, application management support, and as well as infrastructure support for them for the last decade. We actually hosted the workloads that we migrated this year in our data center. So in 2017, we were talking to LP about renewing our contract with them, and they said, Capgemini, we need you to come back with a solution that's more flexible, as reliable or more reliable than what we're doing today, and by the way, we want to be more cost effective. So something we've all heard. And we said, yes, this is a perfect opportunity for migrating them to public cloud. Makes perfect sense. However, at this point in time, LP hadn't even done a pilot. They really hadn't investigated. We hadn't talked to them about public cloud. So how do we get this company, who's relatively conservative from an IT perspective, how do we get them to sign off on running their most critical business processes in the cloud? So what did we start with? 1, we had to have a rock-solid business case. 2, we had to convince them that the architecture and our approach were very solid and robust. So what did we do? we called our partners and our friends at AWS and said, let's come in and do a series of workshops. Let's reaffirm that business case that will save them millions of dollars over the course of this contract. Let's show them the architecture and the approach that we've defined, and you'll sign off on it, we'll sign off on it, and we'll tell them this, we'll show them this is the right way to do it. And the results of this are the video you're going to see now, and a project where we move their entire SAP landscape from our data center to AWS in a total of 14 weeks.
Louisiana Pacific specializes in residential and light commercial construction, flooring, sheathing.
All right, we see it there, we see it here. We don't see it up here. Oh, let's just move it on over.
I told you it was
I'm working without a net, folks.
Roofing components, as well as exterior siding products. The key for us is to make sure that we have solutions that are going to reduce the amount of labor, simplify the building process, and make sure that we're making the most efficient use of our raw materials, as well as efficient products for our homeowners.
Well, with the recovering housing market and the increased demand on our businesses, reliability and uptime is paramount. That's where Capgemini came to us with a partner, Amazon Web Services, to propose a different service model for us to consider. One that was going to provide more value, more security and scalability at a lower cost.
We knew that we were on a hosted environment in a data center. This was an opportunity for us to take a step back and look at, is this the right platform? Is this the right way that we need to be hosting this system? What other options were there presented? There were a lot of risks in this and a lot of unknowns. We'd never done this type of migration before.
Once we went through the first iteration of our migration project, I started to feel a lot better about the approach and the expertise and the guidance that we've been given.
I think the uniqueness that we bring to the table is that we really understand LP's business. So we marry the business aspect of what they're trying to accomplish with the technological solution.
It's a thing we do together to ensure the environment is resilient and secure prior to production, and we make sure that it kind of leverages all the customer experiences that we had up to this point in ensuring success. As AWS, we provide the most certifications of any cloud provider, and it gets to benefit from actually the input of many customers.
They were all on the same page, they all had the same plan, they understood the same risks, and they were helping to manage all the way through that.
So as we were reaching out to the plants, asking them, if they're having any issues, we were surprised to hear that they were actually reporting even better performance than they had previously. We expect to save more than $5 million over the next 5 years while enhancing the services that were being delivered previously.
The response time that we get on certain transactions helps our users to get out of punching keys on a keyboard and back to serving our customers, running the business processes, loading trucks, and delivering value to our customers.
Customers that actually have moved to AWS, they're able to actually consume patches and enhancements from their software providers at a much greater speed and a much lower cost. It actually becomes a competitive asset to be operating on the public cloud.
You want to focus your time on how to innovate your business and not so much on how the infrastructure is going to adapt to your business. Don't be afraid to lose control. Embrace cloud and let cloud help drive your business transformation.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. And what I heard from that short video there was obviously cost reduction, resilience, but a heavy emphasis on having been able to focus staff and resources.
Louisiana Pacific, the building products company,
Oh, hold on.
we are really trying to focus.
We'll just run it again for you, make sure you get the point there. A heavy emphasis on delivering business benefit, focusing on the customer, freeing your time up from supporting the legacy activities and turning that attention to innovation. And that, what we're going to do now, as soon as my tech assistant here brings up the presentation, if he can.
Not only a good partner, but IT support.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is move into lessons learned, a couple of lessons that we've seen critical from the migrations that we've done, and some of them relate back to the key themes or messages that you heard in that presentation. So the first one, and actually, by the way, in Louisiana Pacific, is interesting, because if you remember what Jason said, they were the incumbents there. They were the hosting provider for LP. Now, the good news is LP came and talked to Capgemini about what can we do more innovative for the future. And the good news is as well, Capgemini had a good answer to that. But it could as easily been one of their competitors knocking on the door of LP, and they would not even have known that was going on. And they might have lost the opportunity there. So always keep that in mind, please. When you're talking with your major customers, be the first to be having that cloud conversation with them. Because if you're not, somebody else is, as I mentioned before. Okay, and you need to be talking about it from a business perspective. These migrations are large, tend to be large and complex projects. They need significant investment, and they need significant resources and focus from the executives within the organizations you're going to be dealing with. If you do not have a very robust business case that has been vetted and agreed with the financial teams within that company, the likelihood is either that project won't start or it certainly won't end successfully. And to ensure that these migrations continue effectively and to run and be successful, the business case is critical so you could keep the project focused on the business goals you're trying to drive out of this. These are not technology projects. They have a technology component, but the fundamental element is what am I trying to achieve from a business perspective? And you only get that with a clearly defined business case. So an important message we found over the last 2 or 3 years is we AWS have invested a huge amount of time and effort in developing very comprehensive and robust business cases. We're happy to share that learning with you in the room, but we do recommend, if you're going to be talking to your customers about migrating to AWS, having the capability to talk to them in business case, on a business case basis is critical. And customers that complete a business case migrate faster. We've found that. And some that don't even end up migrating at all because the project meanders off course because they don't really know why they're doing this from a business perspective. And to hold the course on these projects, you've got to have the business people bought in and understanding why they're going through this pain. Okay, and we have, I'm not going to go into detail here, but we have tools and partners who can help with developing your business case practices if you don't already have those. If you do already have those, it presents an opportunity both in the planning phase and then getting paid for that as part of the overall migration planning project. So it's a business opportunity as well as a requirement. Okay, business case is critical. Primary lesson number 1. Number 2, this rather busy slide here shows that all the different migration strategies that we think through as AWS. I'm sure you've got an equivalent in your migration practices, but basically, when we look at a customer's options for migrating their legacy over to AWS, there are 6 different strategies they can take. Actually, there are 7 now. We have a VMware one, but I can't remember what it's called, Kalpan, can you? No. Hot off the presses, there's a 7th strategy, but basically, there are 6 strategies. You can lift and shift it. You can call replatform, which is lift it and tweak it a little to work in AWS. You can actually go and buy a replacement software product that runs on AWS, or you can completely re-architect your applications to make them cloud native. And then there are 2 other strategies, which is retire it because nobody uses it. And surprisingly, that is actually reasonably common. Or it's just too complicated. We're going to keep it running for the time being in legacy. The key thing we recommend is that to drive momentum and immediate business benefit, it's very important to get as many applications as you can over onto the public cloud, onto AWS, as quickly as possible. So without doing any unnatural acts, we recommend that you try and drive as much of the migration through those first 2 strategies, rehost and replatform, or lift and shift and lift and reshape, because that delivers successful migrations, which helps the project, and delivers potential cost savings immediately to the customer, which once again enhances the credibility of the migration project and delivers to the customer's bottom line. And remember, on the very large migrations, these can be 1 to 2 years long. So you need to be showing quick wins to keep the momentum of that project. So as much as you can, drive speed, and obviously some modernization, but try and drive speed as much as you can to deliver that business benefit. And interestingly enough, when we look at those strategies, here are the 6 strategies on this chart, about 70%, so about 10 of the first 15% are retain or retire. Isn't that amazing? 5% of applications out there that our customers have, nobody uses. We can retire them. That's immediately 5% potentially off your cost base. So 15% is basically do nothing with it or close it down. Rehost and replatform is typically about 70% of the workloads are suitable for that. So not only does doing rehosting and replatform deliver early business benefit, it also fits with the typical profile we see for most migration projects once we've done the application portfolio analysis. And then the last 15% is the refactor or going out there and buying software. So you drive momentum by doing the lift and shift, and then focus your resources on refactoring the 10 to 15%. Lesson number 2. The final lesson really is one I want Jason to talk about because he's the one who's experienced this. So Jason.
Thanks, Andy. So as Andy said, any migration, quick wins, speed, velocity, provide early value. How do you do that? You do that by mitigating risk. Risk causes delay, risk causes cost overruns. One of the ways, Capgemini, we believe that one of the best ways to ensure speed and ensure value is to engage early and often with our partners at AWS. So as we said, we brought them in during our pre-sale cycle. And I'll tell you right now, to have our architects and engineers in the room with guys from AWS, that this isn't the first time that they met. This is the 4th or 5th time we've done one of these engagements. The amount of credibility that brings to the table, when these guys are, remember when we did this for this customer, or we came across this challenge and scenario. By the end of these workshops, we had the customer going, we believe you guys have done this. We believe this is the right solution for us. That amount of credibility, there's no better way to ensure a business case or ensure buy-in from a customer than show when and how you've done it. Second thing from a risk perspective that we have to understand is we all know AWS is changing constantly. They roll out features all the time. And it's hard to keep up. If you work closely with AWS, if they know your processes, your approaches, and your capabilities, I've had AWS SAs come, hey, do you know that we're now certified to do this since the last time we've done this? Is this something that will change our approach or change the value that we're going to derive to the customer? We had one last week that they said, do you know we're certified for dynamic data tiering? And it didn't immediately change what we were going to walk in and present to the customer the next day. But during that discussion, the customer asked something and said, yes, we can do this. And it added additional value and benefit over the duration of that engagement. And again, tremendous credibility and buy-in from customers when everyone's on the same page and understands what's going on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and it's critical to get aligned on the sales side as well. I mean, Jason implied that, making sure we're in sync. So we're doing things together rather than tripping over each other. Critical. Okay, so we've talked about the business opportunity. We've talked about some of the key lessons learned. We're now going to talk about some of the emerging themes that we see that are likely to be coming up either now or in the future that you need to be thinking about. And I'll hand over to Kalpan for that. Kalpan.
Thanks, Andy. So, number 3, thank you. So next couple of minutes, I want to talk about what we have seen together, AWS and our partners, into our customers as we started helping them migrating their applications, migrating out of their data centers. And to Andy's point, I think let's go back to the core, the themes of migration projects as we think about it from our customer standpoint. The first one is innovation. The second one he talked about is reducing the risk, and he talked a whole lot about retiring the technical debt. So let's hold on to these core business themes, and as we go along, what we observe into our customers in terms of what's happening and what are the trends, we see a few things, and I want to highlight that based on our initial study. So first thing we saw is the trend as we look at customers using technologies and tooling to do migration faster. As you've heard from Jason, less than 14 weeks, you said, to migrate SAP landscape, 73 applications. if you try to do manually, I'm pretty sure it's impossible to achieve in 14 weeks. So the tooling is critical to do these migrations. If we look at container modernization, that's a theme that we are observing into our customers, and they're adopting to these newer set of methodologies as they look at the holistic picture of migration between the rehost more so of a replatforming and re-architecting their application landscape as they think about transformation inside that data center. The other aspect we've observed more so very recently is, and Andy did allude that the 70 to 80% of the stuff that the application landscape is basically the legacy, and part of it is mainframe. So many of the enterprise customers are running their landscape, their applications, business critical applications on mainframe platforms, and we feel we need to help them figuring it out. How do I identify those applications, those opportunities, and securely migrate them over to the cloud? So mainframe migrations is another key trend, key observation in terms of what's emerging. The third one is lots of legacy. Again, to Andy's point, we have seen that these applications are either bespoke or adapted from third party, but they exist, they constantly run on premises, and they need a lot of effort, a lot of resources to keep them on. So let's keep that in mind and think about it. How do we help solve for our customers? The fourth one, I think Jason talked about it, and clearly a trend on, and we are building on to help our customers, is around how can we build the fastest and simplest way, a method or a combination of tooling and services which our customers can adopt at a very large scale as it comes to migrating SAP landscape, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the last one I want to leave this section here is our abstraction out of these 2, 3, 4 years of effort of learning and executing for our customers. We feel that migration patterns library is something that we can deliver, we can help our partners take into our customers as they help them with, one, strategizing their migration patterns, whether it's a rehost, replatform, or re-architect, or just, to Andy's point, retire some of the applications. So the framework between the 6 or 7 R's as we think about it, and as we think about building those patterns, the idea here is for the customers to leverage those patterns via our partners. So let's go to some of these themes, a couple of minutes each. So application platform could be something between Kubernetes and Pivotal, OpenShift, on any of those packaging and application platforms on the source. What we think as key pattern, and that's emerging, and as we look at customers building on provisioning and building on binding it on the cloud services, AWS Service Broker is a critical element as the customers look at modernizing the application platforms. So this is one key element of what AWS brings in and what we have seen being adopted by customers. I don't have Alan here, but he would love to talk a lot about in detail in his tracks and sessions later this week. Second thing I want to highlight about mainframe migrations, and if we look at the pieces of the puzzle, the process by itself, we have divided that from, as we look at customer first approach, as customers approach AWS and our partners, and in thinking about migrating out of mainframe legacy, we think about them alongside with our ISV partners for tooling and our SI partners for implementation and delivery. So as we think about these few-step process, how do we do these mainframe migrations is that there are assets that are available to our partners, such as yourselves. And Alan is here. Thanks, Alan. We have divided the process of mainframe migration across these 6 stages, and we have assets such as mainframe questionnaire to be able to assess their mainframe landscape and application stack. We then identify right migration patterns as to what piece of the puzzle can be rehosted, re-architected, and repackaged to a certain degree as we look at migrating over to the AWS. We look at the tools and capabilities that automate the process of migration to a great degree specific to mainframe migrations. And then we do a proof of concept with the customer migrating a specific unit of mainframe migration pattern application. And then we do the broader sort of architecture design and deliver a statement of work for them to be able to consume from that point on. Andy's presentation talked about reducing the risk. This is the process by which we want to deliver a certainty to the customer, the journey by which they feel confident about migrating to AWS when it comes to not only mainframe migrations, but the others. The goal at AWS is to build those assets, build those frameworks along with our partners and the tooling that is built by our partners, ISV partners. I want to talk a little bit about an SAP experience here. Again, one of the key emerging themes, and you see what, in this example, again, to the core business theme that Andy has set up initially, innovation on behalf of our customers, how we together as partners deliver that on customers' expectation. This is one of the very good example of how we transform customers' SAP landscape. If we look at the process of SAP migration, the key element is in this situation, there is a SAP BW database, the business warehouse database on premises, and we are looking at migrating that over to AWS. So if you see the key element of size of the database, if you see the backup of 605 terabytes and see the squeeze over 35 days, and that's the first level of achievement. I would say technical excellence using the tooling and capabilities that we have built with SAP and our partners. The other element of it, again, on behalf of our customers, how fast we can run these applications as we think about migrations. There's a 90% faster runtime that we have achieved. Second level of excellence. The third one is that if we look at how customers think this is not at all a risk. So the key element of it is how do we simplify it using the tooling and the methodologies that our partners deliver on and execute within 35 days. That's a time to migrate as a third level of excellence. And you see the fast, second benefit of here is how fast you can do that. If we present to the customer, it's going to take 9 months to migrate this SAP landscape over, I'm sure the customer is going to think about it. And he's also thinking about resources, the investments, the planning it takes, and at the end of the day, the risks, which we talk about again. And so the cost of migration is the third element of where customers are going and what they're thinking as they make migration decisions. Ellen, you want to speak a couple of minutes about the emerging themes? And I can go back. Yeah.
Thank you. So, I think one of the key emerging themes as we see customers try and adopt the cloud, whether it be AWS, multi-cloud, spanning into the cloud is, and I'm sure everybody in the room has spoken to their customers about containers. I think containers, Kubernetes is a massive technology trend. But when we start to look at the way that the enterprise is trying to adopt these technologies, Liberty Mutual, airports like Schiphol Airport, these organizations are really thinking very, very hard about how do I future-proof my investment in this. I think customers have been burned over the years, over and over again, by technologies that come and go. And I'd say that the cloud is a trend that will continue and stick with customers. But things like containers, will that be something I'll be able to use 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if I commit to that technology stack? And when you start to layer on some of the highly respected names, Red Hat, SUSE, SAP, starting to build platforms on top of these containers that really help customers get real trust and scale, we're starting to see real adoption where enterprises are going, this is my platform of choice and where I'm going to do my development going forward. So I think this has been a very, very interesting trend around migrations where customers are sitting back and going, as part of the choices where I make a refactor, one of my R's is a refactor or a replatform. Am I thinking about containers, and then how am I thinking about that as an enterprise strategy going forward?
Thanks, Alan. Any thoughts about mainframe migrations? 30 seconds.
No, I caught the end of it. You got it. You
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So last one before I leave the stage here and leave to Andy is the migration patterns. So we talked about those 6 R's, and we will probably have 7th pretty soon in the slides. But as we look at the patterns, it's again a prescriptive guidance for our partners and customers to use as a certain method in which they think about migrations, whether it's rehost, re-architect, re-platform, and such like. It's a patterns library that AWS migration professional services team have built, and it's growing at a faster clip. What we want to talk about is today is just the purpose of the library is for customers to leverage these capabilities, automation, and methodologies to be able to adapt to migrations faster, move their workloads faster. Number 2 is the value from partner standpoint is that there is a ability to generate leads. Let's talk about in particular what do we mean by generate leads. A partner, our ISV partner said Splunk. They have built 3 migration patterns as to how do the customers migrate from Splunk running on premises to Splunk Cloud, which is their SaaS on AWS. And this prescriptive methodology helps not only customers to adapt to the cloud, but also have a specific methods and tooling around to achieve that over and over. So our partners can use these methodologies and patterns library to take it over to their multiple customers. So making it scalable, that's the key. Agility, so it represents the ability. We have built all of those assets, and we've squeezed the time it takes to do the between the automation and services. So that's the second, and the exposure it gets. So the skill sets, the people, and methodologies, and tooling are squeezed and abstracted enough by our professional services team for the partner community to leverage. So I'll leave with that here for the partners to take some more, get some guidance on from your respective counterparts on migration patterns library. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Kalpan. Yeah, and as Kalpan said, we think that's a great lead generation opportunity for partners. If you've got patterns about what it takes to effectively migrate over different workloads, different types of technologies, put them in the pattern library because our customers are going to be looking at those as landing platforms, and our professional services teams are as well. Okay, what I'm going to do now is grab a few minutes on how the programs we have in place to work with you as you go to market for working with your customers on migration. So this is what we're offering to you to work with us on migration projects. Firstly, there is a migration competency out there, both for SI and consulting partners and for our technology partners. It sets the bar for the capabilities and skills of our partners when it comes to working with customers on their migrations. And our customers look to this migration competency to determine what partners they should work with. At the moment, there are only around about 45 consulting partners in the competency. Kalpan will put a slide up to show you the number of technology partners. So I would recommend, if you're not already in the competency, look at it, figure out whether it's something you want to go after. But certainly, when it comes to working with customers on migrations to AWS, they do look to the competency. And by the way, our investment programs are typically only available for partners who are in that competency. So there is an incentive there. We have training and enablement as well, both from a delivery and from a go-to-market perspective. These are the 2 basically funding programs we have. If it's a large-scale migration, use the Migration Acceleration Program. If it's a medium-sized migration, use the Partner Migration Program. If you're thinking about working with your customers on migrating to AWS, those are the 2 programs you should keep in mind. I know we have many, many programs out there, but these are the 2 to keep in mind when working with your customers. Okay? Partner Migration Program, early on in the customer's journey. Smaller projects, maybe when they're kicking the tires on AWS, when they're starting to move over smaller workloads, use the Partner Migration Program. When your customer is ready to move at speed and at scale onto AWS, that is when the Migration Acceleration Program is applicable. You don't have to absorb all this today. Work through your local AWS partner manager. If you've got a migration opportunity, they will be able to work with you to point you in the right direction for the program to support you on that opportunity. Okay? Our programs have these components. A methodology. If you don't have a methodology, most of our partners do have robust methodologies. We've spent a lot of time and effort over the last couple of years, 3 years, developing a robust methodology. We're happy to share that with you and train your teams on it. Tooling, same thing. We've developed an ecosystem of tooling partners. Tools reduce the risk of migrations, reduce the cost, and increase the speed of those migrations. So we can share that learning with us. I've already said partners are critical to our migration programs. So you are the core element when it comes to working with our customers on migrations. Professional services is there to support your projects and your customers. And we have training both for your end customers and for your teams as required to develop your migration capabilities. And then a pretty sizable investment to help our customers offset the typically one-off cost of migrating to AWS. Typically, they're running their legacy environments. They're paying for AWS as they spin up on AWS, and hopefully they're paying for your services to help them get over there. There is a large investment component that is designed to help offset that cost to your end customers. And our methodology and our programs are focused on the end customer success. Gartner just did a report recently on the different cloud providers' capability to support their customers migrating to AWS. Go and hunt out the report. AWS and our programs came out very, very strongly in that. And partners was highlighted as a critical component of the completeness of that program. Where we make our investment, you've already seen this slide before. When looking at migrations, upfront assessment, the planning phase, then the migration phase. Our investments will be both in the planning phase and in the migration phase. They can be in the form of cash to offset the cost of your services to your end customer. They can be in the form of usage credits that can be applied to your customer's AWS bill. You can have professional services support, there's training, and there's access to discounted tools as well. And our investments are designed to be front-loaded early on in the migration project to help offset the cost of that project to your customer. All right, Kalpen's going to do a couple of minutes on tooling, aren't you, Kalpen? And then we'll focus in on sort of immediate next steps coming out of this session. Kalpen.
Thanks, Andy. So we talked about tooling, and Ellen's team and our business organization, we spent good 2 years in identifying the right set of tooling that we can recommend to our customers. But the other job to do for us was to figure out what set of tooling is made available during which phase of the migration. And I want to call this as sort of a tool chain. And this is the automation that leads to the faster migrations and reduces the cost. So our partners come in the earliest stage, and these are the 3 core stages that Andy has shown previously about assessment, the planning, and the actual application migrations. If you see the assessment phase, the core job to do is to figure out what's in the environment, what's in the data center, and figuring it out from a perspective of what applications should migrate first, second, and third, and such like. And the second piece, key puzzle, if you will, is to figure out what's my return on investment or total cost of ownership. One thing for sure is migration is a one-off cost, and Andy talked about it, but I still want to know how long will it take and what resources does it take for me to get over the line. So that's the business case, and we talked about business case is critical. We have observed clearly the customers who have gone through a detailed business case exercise have migrated faster. Next phase is finding out application dependency mapping, and that helps customers build a wave plan as to what migrates first, second, third, and why. And every customer's criteria and output from that priority is different because their applications do different things for their customers. The next phase is really migration, where you see the workload mobility, whether it's physical or virtual servers. We got to lift and shift them and figure out how do we do more than that. with respect to replat and re-architect. And there are tooling available for application, VM migrations, physical migrations, and data migrations. And last piece is the validation, which is where the customers would want to accept and test the applications before and after the migration, so they know what was the application performance before, or how does the application deliver the results before and after. So that's a sort of validation piece at the end. And that's how we think about a prescriptive methodology in which the whole migration tool chain works for the customers. What more we can innovate on behalf of our customers is in migration tools. AWS has something under the migration services under the console called AWS Migration Hub, which is where these integration, the tools are integrated in a fashion that it becomes a simplified, accelerated process. In one way to look at it is that the customers may think they need to buy like 3, 4, or 5 tools to achieve their migration, and it's a different process each time. How do we simplify that process of identifying, trying, and delivering on those tools and automation? So Migration Hub plays that critical role, which is where it's a single central location where all the application migrations are tracked, irrespective of which migration tool is used by the customer. So that's our migration tooling strategy in general, and customers are free to choose their right tools that works for them, that is right, that delivers on their expected results, and Migration Hub will continue the momentum through the migration tool chain, if you will, and make it simple for them to execute. Last one I want to talk about here is how do we, together, AWS and our tooling partners and our SI partners, innovate on behalf of customers. In this example, Risk Networks, we have Don here. Don, thank you. So in this example, Risk Networks has worked with our customer, Eastman, in the manufacturing industry, and they identified not only the applications and the environment that the customers running on premises, but also solved for how do I prioritize the right workloads that delivers right results at the end of the migrations. So the customer's criteria might be different each case, or it depends on the application. But as you observe here, Risk Networks has worked with us and our customers to identify those key elements of their migrations to answer the questions which are very critical up front for the customers that, hey, I got these 400 applications. How am I going to decide which goes first? Knowing the dependency of the applications from a server and infrastructure standpoint may not be enough, because there's a whole lot more to identify before we prioritize the application for migration. And here is the insight-driven approach, data-driven approach to identify right applications to migrate at a higher priority. So that's what the customer says at the end. We want to go to, in the beginning, we want to go to the cloud, but we have 400 apps and we are running out of storage. Help us figure this out. So one of the key business business objective is to figure out the storage. That's an inherent ask or a question priority, right? So here's the sort of results and impact. So Risk Networks work with the customer in identifying right criteria for the application prioritization for move, and they also created a multi-year migration plan that happened during 2018, is going to go through all the 1,500 servers in the data center, 300 plus applications that are prioritized to migrate, and a bunch of 30 plus shared dependency on the databases. So that's the clear example of how AWS and their partners innovate on behalf of customers to solve their unique migration problems. And we talk about a couple of minutes on how do we enable our partners to bring this experience and that expectation of reduced risk from the customer's migration project. So if we look at the vehicles in terms of how do we enable our partners, there is something that starts with AWS Navigate program, which is a self-paced APN training initiative for partners to build their migration practice. More often than not, when Andy and I go meet with the partners, they question us, how do I start building my migration practice? How do I build that new skill set in-house and scale it? And that's the starting point. I would point them to Navigate program. There are several online labs, self-paced labs, and train the trainer approach that Alan's team is constantly working through the year in enabling our partners, consultants, so they not only know the latest and the best prescribed methodology to migrate, help customers migrate, but also get access to the right tooling and those frameworks out of those trainings. So that is a trainer approach. We are working with a few partners this time who are taking on the role of training the core team in-house and then making it part of their ongoing migration curriculum and training at a much larger scale internally. There are some just-in-time trainings for partners who are building the new migration, larger scale migration projects for their customers. They're happy to join the just-in-time training approach. And there are joint customer engagements where the partner solution architects help the partners build those first few migration assessments, statement of works, delivery approaches, and validate that their approach is ideal from a customer's outcome standpoint. And then there are workshops that run all throughout the year that our partner solution architects deliver. Again, focusing on Navigate program, there is a distinguished approach for standard and advanced tier partners with different stages and different aspects of what do we get during what stage of the partner tier. And at this point, I'm going to leave Andy to help us wrap up. Thank you so much.
So Navigate, actually, I'd strongly recommend if you're in the early stages of developing your migration practice or trying to figure out how to get the competency, Navigate is a great place to start, as Kalpan said. Basically, next steps. First thing, if you have any migration opportunities, let us know. We'll be very keen to start working with you. Reach out to your partner contact from AWS, get them engaged, and we'll work with you today on those opportunities. More generally, if you're looking to develop your migration practice, or you want to get the competency, or you want to jointly work on go-to-market activities, once again, connect with your partner contact, and then they will bring us as the partner migration program team in to work with you. And we've got not just North America, we've got teams in EMEA and APAC as well, so we can work with you globally on that. And that strange individual who gave you the view on containers, sitting over there in the corner, is actually Alan Brown, who is the lead of our partner migration solution architects. So he's got the brain the size of a planet and a team with the brains the size of the planet, so they can be engaged with you as well to help you develop your migration practices or help take them to the next level or share best practice. Okay? So, we've totally badly managed our time, and I apologize for that, but what we've done here is we've given you an overview of why customers are looking to migrate to AWS, the business opportunity for them. We told you about the business opportunity that we see for partners, a significant business opportunity. We covered some of the key lessons learned, business case, driving speed and early delivery of results, engaging with AWS early on. And then we talked about emerging migration themes, and then talked about, at a relatively high level, the programs and the enablement available to you. We've spent the last 2 or 3 years developing all this collateral, all this support for you, because it's critically important to AWS. And we want to share that with you. And if we're already working with you, we want to go deeper and wider with you. So please, one action out of this, if you've got a migration opportunity, let us know through your partner manager. And if you want to start to figure out with us how to either get the competency or work more closely on go-to-market activities or enabling your migration delivery capabilities, contact your partner manager and we'll engage with you. Given we've so badly managed our time, we now have 42 seconds for one question, but we will hang around a little bit afterwards if there are any people who've got questions. So does anybody squeeze in the question? Go on. Yeah, very much so. So what we do, we've developed very much a horizontal platform here because a lot of migrating to AWS, the same practices, principles, and approaches apply no matter what vertical you're working with. But obviously the business benefits are very much vertically driven. So we work with our vertical organizations within AWS to, in effect, let them rebadge our migration offerings and then tailor that in a way that can be taken to the end customer. And we do that with partners as well. So we have the core program, which is very horizontal, and then we bring in the specific vertical focus, working with our vertical teams. 22 seconds. Did it answer the question? Anyone else with a question? 22 seconds. No? I guess we're done. Well, thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it. And as I say, we'll hang around here for a few minutes if there are any questions.